When legendary baseball player Ted Williams died in 2002, his head was cryogenically frozen by the Alcor Life Extension Foundation so that he could potentially be revived in the future. But according to a former employee, his severed head was badly mishandled and allegedly used for batting practice with a wrench inside of the lab. Alcor has denied these dark allegations. In Washington state, a man tried to heat up a lava lamp on his stovetop for unknown reasons. The lamp exploded like a grenade, sending a shard of glass into his chest and puncturing his heart. He was found dead on his kitchen floor, surrounded by wax and broken glass. In 2016, a woman from China was found mummified inside an elevator at her apartment complex. A power outage had shut the lift down and no one realized she was inside. After power returned, no one checked the elevator for more than a month, and at some point she likely died from dehydration. When maintenance workers finally found her body, her hands were completely mangled and claw marks were found inside the elevator, as she desperately attempted to pry the doors open to free herself. 2022, a 25-year-old woman named Sharaban wanted to escape personal and family issues in her life. So she devised a crazy plan to fake her own death and searched social media for lookalikes, eventually stumbling upon a German beauty influencer named Khadija who closely resembled her. After promising the model free beauty treatments, Sharaban kidnapped her and stabbed her 56 times before leaving the body in her car, attempting to pass it off as her own. The influencer was initially misidentified as Sharaban until DNA testing revealed the disturbing truth, as her horrific plan resulted in life in prison. Australian woman Noella Rukunko became famous in 2015 after crashing her own funeral. She was presumed dead after her husband paid several hitmen to kill her upon wrongly suspecting that she was cheating on him. But instead, the hitmen spared her life since they knew her brother and refused to kill women or children. They revealed their husband's plot to her before providing all the evidence and helping her fake her own death. Days later, Noella walked into her own funeral that was organized by her husband, causing him to faint on the spot. He was later arrested, confessed to the crime, and sentenced to 9 years in prison for incitement to murder. Eminem's track Brain Damage was inspired by his real-life childhood bully, D'Angelo Bailey. In an interview, Bailey once boasted about beating Eminem so severely that it caused a concussion, bleeding from the ears, and temporary vision loss. In 2001, Bailey tried suing Eminem for slander over the song, but the case was thrown out by the judge, who delivered the ruling in the form of a rap. This photo from 1977 shows a Rhodesian soldier interrogating a group of captured rebels. The men had to hold this position until they talked, and the first one to fall would receive a bullet in the forehead. In 1982, 7 people in the Chicago area randomly dropped dead after taking cyanide-laced Tylenol capsules. The incident changed packaging laws forever, but the killer was never caught. In 2021, a 39-year-old man was reported missing in Barcelona. Days later, his rotting corpse was found stuck inside a papier-mâché dinosaur statue located outside of an abandoned movie theater. He'd somehow dropped his phone inside of the statue, crawled in to retrieve it, got stuck, and died upside down. While filming the 1972 film Napoleon and Samantha, 9-year-old Jodie Foster was mauled by a substitute lion on set. The big cat picked Foster up, shook her around like a rag doll, and only released her when its trainer yelled, "Drop it." Foster later said she was in shock and thought it was an earthquake as she watched the rest of the crew run away. The same lion had nearly mauled Bob Denver while filming an episode of Gilligan's Island years earlier, and shouldn't have been anywhere near a film studio afterwards. Foster still has scars on her stomach and back from the incident and has suffered from severe ailurophobia ever since. Almost immediately after being liberated from concentration camps, an estimated 14,500 Holocaust survivors died from refeeding syndrome, since their bodies couldn't process normal food after such prolonged starvation. During the back surgery of a Hawaiian man in 2006, the surgeon couldn't find the 2 titanium rods that were supposed to be implanted into the man's spine, so he decided to improvise by implanting the shaft of a screwdriver instead. The screwdriver eventually snapped, and the man died 2 years later following 3 more corrective back surgeries. The patient's family was eventually awarded $5.6 million in a malpractice lawsuit. In 1915, a strange illness called encephalitis lethargica broke out across the globe. Nicknamed the sleeping sickness, the disease attacked the patient's brains, leaving them frozen in a statue-like state, fully conscious but unable to move or speak. One of the most haunting aspects of this disease was its unpredictability. Some patients recovered quickly, never experiencing any long-term effects. while others went into a deep coma and never woke up. Then there were patients who seemed completely recovered, until years later when the illness came back and suddenly turned them catatonic. At least 500,000 people died from the terrifying disease before it vanished without explanation 10 years later, just as suddenly as it appeared. While many theories have been put forth over the last century, epidemiologists still remain haunted by the mysterious sickness and its unknown origins. Some say it never left, but still lingers in the shadows, waiting for the right moment to strike again. Mel Blanc, the voice of Bugs Bunny and many more, started smoking at age 9 and changed his name from Blank to Blanc after a teacher told him he would amount to nothing just like his name. He was once involved in a head-on collision at a Sunset Boulevard intersection known as Dead Man's Curve, a spot notorious for accidents. The crash resulted in a 2-week coma, and he was completely non-responsive until a doctor decided to ask him, "How are you feeling today, Bugs Bunny?" Blanc then responded to him in the voice of Bugs and thus woke up from the coma. This also happened in the middle of production for season 1 of The Flintstones, for which Blanc was the voice of Barney Rubble. So during his stay in the hospital, the other actors would crowd around his hospital bed to record their lines. Around 40 episodes of The Flintstones were recorded in this manner. After the legendary voice actor died from heart disease and emphysema in 1989, his tombstone read, "That's all, folks." Jim Morrison died in France at the age of 27. No autopsy was performed as it was not required by French law. The official cause of death was listed as heart failure, but several witnesses say he actually overdosed in a nightclub bathroom and his drug dealers carried his body to his apartment bathtub. However, these claims couldn't be verified without an autopsy. During the siege of Leningrad, the city was blockaded by Nazi Germany for 872 days. Food supplies were so scarce that people resorted to eating wallpaper paste and even boiled leather from furniture. In the worst cases, cannibalism was documented by people digging up corpses and consuming them. Despite this, the city never surrendered, and about 1 million civilians died during the deadly siege. In the year 897, Pope Stephen VI had his dead predecessor, Pope Formosus, dug up, dressed in papal robes, and put on trial simply because the new pope hated him. They propped his decayed corpse on a throne, screamed at it, and found him guilty since he obviously had no defense. Formosus was stripped of his papacy while his corpse had 3 of its fingers cut off before being thrown in a river. The public was horrified by this grotesque trial, as Stephen VI was soon imprisoned and strangled to death. Formosus's body was later recovered from the river, reburied with honors, and his papacy was eventually reinstated by a later pope. In 2016, Star Trek actor Anton Yelchin died in a freak accident at the young age of 27. After pulling into his driveway in his Jeep Grand Cherokee, Yelchin went to check his locked gate for mail when the car suddenly rolled back down the driveway and pinned him against a pillar connected to the gate. It's unknown how long it took for the actor to pass, but he was found dead by friends hours after he failed to arrive at rehearsal, and the official cause of death was blunt traumatic asphyxia. Yelkin's particular car model had a known design flaw that confused drivers about whether it was properly in park, and was later recalled due to faulty gear shifters. If you think you have high cholesterol, this guy will make you feel a lot better, or should I say, a lot butter. A Florida man in his 40s followed an extreme carnivore diet for 8 months, consuming nothing but beef, butter, and cheese. He often ate entire sticks of butter and several pounds of cheese each day, causing his total cholesterol to skyrocket to over 1,000 milligrams per deciliter, while anything over 200 is considered high. As a result, he developed painless yellow cholesterol nodules on his palms, elbows, and the soles of his feet. Despite this, the patient said he felt great following the diet and was able to lose weight while significantly improving his energy levels and mental clarity. A 27-year-old beauty queen from Kosovo has reportedly died after attempting to flee from police. Güler Erdogan allegedly tried driving home while drunk until she ran into a police checkpoint. After a breathalyzer recorded her BAC as 3 times the legal limit, she decided to flee from the scene on foot, fearing that her modeling career was over. She ran over to the edge of the overpass and reportedly fell over by accident, plummeting 50 feet onto the 6-lane motorway below before she was fatally struck by a car. In 2012, a woman from South Carolina discovered that her ex-boyfriend of 12 years had been secretly living in her attic for several weeks. She'd been hearing strange noises and nails dropping from the ceiling of her bedroom, before eventually sending her nephew to investigate, who found the man sleeping on the attic's heating unit. The ex-boyfriend had also rigged the ceiling vents to apparently look into the woman's bedroom from above. Upon discovery, he fled the scene before police arrived but was later apprehended. In 2008, Swedish identical twins Ursula and Sabina Eriksson suddenly sprinted into oncoming traffic on the M6 motorway in London. Ursula was struck by a truck and Sabina by a car, yet both miraculously survived. But as paramedics tended to them, they both violently resisted help, with Sabina screaming, "They're going to steal your organs." She then punched a baffled officer and tried to run into traffic again. Ursula was hospitalized, but Sabina was released the next day despite continued erratic behavior. Just hours later, Sabina encountered a man who kindly offered food and a place to stay, only for Sabina to stab him to death the next day before jumping off a bridge while fleeing from police. Despite fracturing her skull, she survived yet again and was later sentenced to 5 years for manslaughter. There was no evidence that drugs or alcohol was involved in their sudden strange behavior, as the incidents have been chalked up to an episode of shared psychosis. For Mr. Beast videos suffers from a genetic eye condition called achromatopsia that only allows him to see the world in shades of white, black, and gray. It's a rare form of color blindness where all 3 cone types are completely absent from the eye, resulting in the inability to perceive any colors whatsoever. Scottish guitarist Les Harvey, known for performing with multiple rock bands throughout the 60s and 70s, narrowly escaped death in a fatal car crash in 1965, only to be fatally electrocuted on stage in 1972 after touching an ungrounded microphone. This gravestone is shared by twin sisters Emily and Minnie Dodsworth. Emily lived for just 2 days while Minnie lived for over 100 years. In 2003, a Houston doctor stepped into an elevator when its doors malfunctioned and suddenly closed on him. The elevator then shot upward unexpectedly before the man could fully enter, instantly severing his head and shoulders while leaving the rest of his body in the hallway outside. A young nurse inside the elevator was physically unharmed but severely traumatized after she was stuck inside the elevator with the doctor's remains for several hours. Its creator Jim Henson's death was made all the more tragic by how easily it could have been prevented. In May of 1990, he dismissed what seemed like mild flu-like symptoms, unaware that his body was actually under attack by a rare strain of Group A streptococcus. The bacteria ravaged his lungs, filling them with blood and fluid as he slipped into septic shock. By the time he stumbled into the ER, several of his organs were already shutting down, as doctors described it as being hit by a freight train of bacteria. Despite frantic attempts to save him, Henson died at age 53, 20 hours after arriving at the hospital. Medical experts later said that if he had arrived just a few hours earlier, he likely would have survived. In a chilling discovery, archaeologists have found the first physical evidence of ancient Roman gladiators battling wild animals, an 1800-year-old skeleton in York, England bearing lion bite marks on the pelvis. Excavated from Driffield Terrace, a site believed to be a gladiator cemetery, the remains belong to a man aged between 26 and 35. The bite marks on his pelvis showed no signs of healing, indicating that the injuries were most likely fatal. The gladiator was also found to have been decapitated, either as a ritual practice or mercy killing after the brutal mauling. College basketball star Len Bias was drafted second overall in the 1986 NBA draft, hailed as a future legend and often likened to Michael Jordan for his explosive athleticism. But just 2 days later, while celebrating his selection with friends, Bias collapsed after snorting high-grade cocaine in a University of Maryland dorm room. He suffered a massive cardiac arrhythmia as his heart seized violently and he started convulsing. Despite the desperate attempts to revive him, Bias was pronounced dead within hours. His sudden drug-induced death sent shockwaves through the sports world, forever turning him into a tragic symbol of unrealized greatness. In 2010, 35-year-old Steve Carter made a startling discovery when he found an age-progressed image of himself on a missing children's website. Though he knew he was adopted, this led to the shocking discovery that he was actually Marks Barnes, a child that was abducted in Hawaii in 1977. When he was just a baby, his biological mother had kidnapped him during a custody dispute, changed both their identities, and raised him under a fake name. DNA tests confirmed his true identity, and after 34 years, he was reunited with his biological father, who had never stopped searching for him. While filming The 7-Year Itch in 1954, a crowd of over 1,500 New Yorkers swarmed 51st Street to witness Marilyn Monroe's now iconic skirt-blowing scene. As her white dress billowed up with each gust from the subway grate, onlookers reportedly shouted, "Higher, higher," turning the shoot into a public spectacle. Monroe's possessively abusive husband, Joe DiMaggio, was reportedly furious over the display. That night, he physically assaulted her so violently that she filed for divorce just 3 weeks later, citing mental cruelty as the reason. Just recently, American YouTuber Mikhailo Polyakov was arrested after illegally traveling to North Sentinel Island, home to an uncontacted and highly vulnerable tribe protected by Indian law. Known for his danger tourism stunts, Polyakov used a dinghy and GPS to reach the Forbidden Island, where he left a coconut and a can of Diet Coke as offerings while he recorded the encounter. His actions violated strict laws banning all contact with the Sentinelese to prevent disease exposure and cultural disruption. It was his third attempt to approach the violent tribe, and he now faces up to 5 years in prison amid widespread outrage over his idiotic stunt. Actor David Harbour has been very open about his dark past, particularly his struggles with mental health, alcoholism, and suicidal thoughts. Diagnosed with bipolar disorder at age 25 after a severe manic episode, Harbour was admitted to a mental hospital when he started believing he was receiving divine messages and was possibly the Antichrist. Prior to this, he spent years battling alcohol addiction, which began in his teens and only worsened in college, leading to a life he described as lonely, directionless, and self-destructive. He is admitted to violent emotional outbursts during manic episodes, such as smashing mirrors and feeling like a danger to himself and others. At his lowest, he felt like he was slowly disappearing and contemplated taking his own life. Harbour now credits acting with saving his life since it gave him a way to channel his mental chaos into performance. Now sober and in treatment, he describes himself as someone who enjoys consciousness too much to ever return to his old ways. Actor Michael Berryman was born with ectodermal dysplasia, a rare genetic disorder that left him without hair, fingernails, or sweat glands, stripping him of the body's natural ability to regulate temperature. His striking appearance made him a fixture in horror films, most notably in The Hills Have Eyes, which became a life-threatening ordeal to film. Shot in the Mojave Desert, Berryman was forced to endure heavy costumes and layers of makeup under a merciless sun, all while his body lacked the ability to sweat or cool itself. He later described the experience as grueling and admitted that without strict precautions from the crew, he could have easily collapsed and died from heat stroke during the production. For years, Ray Brent Marsh, operator of the Tri-State Crematory in Georgia, failed to cremate hundreds of bodies entrusted to him. Instead, he left 339 corpses scattered in the woods, stuffed into sheds, or piled into vaults. Some decayed beyond recognition, others mummified or still in body bags, bloated and oozing fluids as the stench reportedly spread for miles. Families were unknowingly given cement powder, sawdust, or crushed concrete in urns, led to believe it was the ashes of their loved ones. Marsh claimed the cremation machine was broken, but it was fully functional, leading to him giving bizarre shifting excuses such as the claim that he actually opposed cremation. He eventually pleaded guilty to nearly 800 charges and spent 12 years in prison. During a match in Germany in 1993, star tennis player Monica Seles was stabbed in the back with a 9-inch kitchen knife by Gunter Parch, an obsessed fan of her rival Steffi Graf. Parch was infuriated that Seles had overtaken Graf as the #1 player in the world, and admitted that he wanted to injure Seles so severely that she couldn't play tennis for a long time. Following the attack, Seles took a 2-year hiatus from pro tennis and never fully regained her prior dominance. The attacker received a suspended sentence with probation and psychological treatment, a verdict that sparked widespread outrage across the sports world. In 2019, a French man accidentally killed his friend during a fight and in a panic stuffed his body under his mattress. To avoid suspicion, he slept on it for nearly 2 years while regularly spraying air fresheners and bug repellent to mask the stench. He was eventually caught when the odor became overwhelming for his neighbors. In 1984, California man David Burke was fired from his airline job for a petty theft, so he smuggled a loaded gun onto the flight, shot the pilots mid-air, and deliberately crashed the plane into the ground, killing all 43 passengers on board. Investigators later found a note in his pocket addressed to his former boss stating, "I asked for some leniency for my family, remember? Well, I got none, and you'll get none." Jeremy Renner's snowplow accident in January 2023 proved to be even more graphic than initially reported. While attempting to assist a stranded vehicle near his home, he was suddenly pulled under his 14,000-pound snowplow, which crushed his body with so much force that he later recalled hearing the crunching of his own bones. Renner sustained 38 broken bones, a collapsed lung, severe cranial trauma, and required extensive reconstruction with metal plates in his chest, legs, and face. Among the most horrifying details he later revealed was that the impact had dislodged his left eyeball so severely that he could see it sticking out with his right eye. Despite the injuries, Renner remained conscious throughout the ordeal, fully aware of his condition, and at one point attempted to write what he believed would be his final words to his family. The actor has since regained much of his physical function, thanks largely to his daughter's support and his own relentless determination to continue living. 1918, Austrian artist Oskar Kokoschka commissioned a life-size doll of the love of his life Alma Mahler after the end of their affair. He requested that it be constructed with swan skin with the feathers still attached, and stuffed with sawdust, cotton wool, and horsehair to mimic the softness of flesh. He even asked for anatomically accurate features, including a mouth with teeth and a tongue, and specified that the doll's intimate parts be perfect and luxuriant. The result was apparently so lifelike and disturbing that Kokoschka's butler suffered a stroke immediately upon seeing it. It's illegal to save baby sea turtles from predators if you don't have a permit. So if you ever see this happening before your eyes, you must let nature take its course unless you're willing to risk jail time. Why? In 2001, a 6-year-old boy was undergoing a routine MRI scan in New York after surgery to remove a brain tumor. While he was sedated inside the machine, a metal oxygen tank was accidentally brought into the MRI suite, where the powerful magnetic field violently pulled it across the room. The tank struck the boy in the head with devastating force, fracturing his skull and causing brain injuries that were fatal. After leaving the hit sitcom Different Strokes and struggling to find success as an adult actress, Dana Plato spiraled into addiction, poverty, and run-ins with the law. In 1991, Dana entered a Las Vegas video store with a pellet gun and demanded all the money in the cash register, after which the flabbergasted clerk called 911 saying, "I've just been robbed by the girl who played Kimberly on Different Strokes." Dana soon lost custody of her only child, was caught forging prescriptions, and attempted to salvage her career by posing for Playboy, but found little redemption. By 1999, she was a faded star clinging desperately to the hope of a comeback, but her appearance on The Howard Stern Show turned into a public humiliation. Stern and his callers openly mocked her claims of being sober for 10 years, with some cruelly suggesting she was just moments away from another downfall. Within 24 hours of the interview, Dana died alone from an overdose of prescription pills at the young age of 34. Mary Bell was only 10 years old when she committed 2 shocking murders in 1968, making her one of the youngest known child killers in modern history. Raised in a violently abusive home in Newcastle, England, Mary first killed 4-year-old Martin Brown by strangulation after telling him his neck looked sore and offering to massage it. She then returned to the scene days later to leave taunting notes saying that she would kill again. 2 months later, she murdered 3-year-old Brian Howe in the same way, not only strangling him but also mutilating his body with scissors and carving the letter M into his stomach. Along with her 13-year-old accomplice Norma Bell, Mary was arrested and showed no remorse during her interrogation. In court, she was only convicted of manslaughter due to her young age and served 12 years in prison before being released with a new identity. Mary and her daughter were granted lifelong anonymity by the court as her current whereabouts are unknown. Ever since she was a little girl, Jewel Shuping wanted to be blind. So in 2006, she poured drain cleaner into her eyes and blinded herself. She says that she is happier than ever after fulfilling her lifelong wish. Less than 24 hours after you die, your pet cat will start eating your face. Charlie No Face was an urban legend in Pennsylvania who used to walk along the side of highways at night. In reality, he was a man named Raymond Robinson who was left badly disfigured after a childhood electrocution accident. He only went out at night so his face wouldn't scare people, and he was said to be a friendly and well-liked man. Delphine LaLaurie was a 19th century socialite who lived in New Orleans. She owned many slaves, but was known for acting very politely towards them in public. But in 1834, her true evil side was exposed when her house caught on fire. The fire was set by her cook, who was chained to the stove and attempted to burn herself to death. It prompted a group of men to investigate LaLaurie's attic, where they discovered a scene of absolute horror. The room was full of bound slaves who had been tortured so badly that most of the men vomited. Amongst other atrocities, some of the victims were missing their eyes and had their mouths sewn shut. Madame LaLaurie apparently fled the country and lived out the rest of her days in Paris. In 2007, actor Nicolas Cage purchased her former home for $3.5 million. Bullets fired into the air usually fall back down at terminal velocity. As a result, there have been thousands of deaths due to celebratory gunfire. For example, in 2003, more than 20 people were killed by celebratory gunfire in Iraq following the deaths of Saddam Hussein's 2 sons. Chemical castration is mandatory in Florida and California for pedophiles convicted of their second offense. During a 2019 expedition to the deepest point in the ocean, explorers found a plastic bag and candy wrappers, indicating that plastic pollution hasn't spared even the most remote corners of the ocean. This elderly woman from Brooklyn is a hoarder who also happens to be legally blind. At some point in the 1990s, her son who lived in the house disappeared. In 2016, his fully clothed skeleton was found in a room filled with garbage. She had been living with his corpse for 20 years. These are just some of the reasons why people used to be committed to mental asylums. In 2006, 5-year-old Robert Turner called 911 after his mother collapsed in her bedroom. But the operator hung up after asking him to put an adult on the phone and assuming it was a prank. 3 hours later, he called 911 again and another operator told him to stop prank calling. This time, police were sent to the home where they found that the mother of 10 had died from a heart attack.